What's up, guys? Back for my sun sign series today, talking about sun in the sign of Sagittarius. Saggy Bay, ever had one? Or better yet, has a Saggy Bay ever had you? They like to think that they're the one who did the chasing and the capturing, right? Remember, the symbol for Sagittarius is the archer. They're always aiming at something. There's always an intention. An intention when they're at their best. A motivation when they're at their worst. So, know the difference. So first of all, what is the sun? The sun, again, is your energy source. Think of the sun and solar system, what that does. It's the source of light and heat and energy for Earth and for the other planets. I don't know what the other planets need energy for. I don't know. If you believe in aliens, then there might be some effect there. But Sagittarius believes in aliens. Yeah, they are a very adventurous bunch. They're real adventure bears. Yeah, they're exploratory. They like to have a good time. They're very expansive in the mind, in the heart, right? But again, your sun's your main energy source. It's the energy that you are putting out. It's your vitality, right? It's your ego personality and how you want to be seen by others. Sagittarius is the mutable fire sign. Mutability has to do with adaptability, versatility. Can be a leader, can be a follower, depending on what the situation is and how their values are aligned for whatever given task that they're performing. But it can kind of swing both ways, and this gives Sagittarius, as well as the other mutable signs, kind of a down for whatever fun kind of attitude. I wouldn't necessarily say that Virgo's super fun, but once Virgo breaks out of their shell, the mutable earth sign, Virgo can definitely be down for whatever. You'll see the Virgo act very out of character whenever they get comfortable, but it's part of their character to do that, so don't sell them short. Anyway, back to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a fire sign, okay? Which means that they are guided and inspired by the heart. Sagittarius kind of has this mental aspect to them. They tend to be quite sapiosexual. That means sexually attracted to intelligence. But it's really their heart that is captured by that. Fire signs are guided by the heart. Aries is more like just heartful sort of impulsivity, act first, think later. Leo is really courageous, courage comes from the strength of the heart, right? Sagittarius is more expansive, more exploratory, and has a little more endurance than, say, Aries, which tends to burn out as quickly as it flames up. Sagittarius is the wildfire of the zodiac. It's a fire sign. It's mutable, so it needs a pre-existing kind of physical structure in order to maintain its shape. You have to put up big, solid, concrete walls to stop a wildfire from spreading, right? And they are big picture thinkers, which means that they will continue to spread their fire at expense of lots of individual trees, Sagittarius has big ideas, is very inspirational, and is inspired in big ways. So they're big picture thinkers, and it doesn't take much for them to want to cover a lot of ground, but they often overlook the details. So that's one of their weaknesses, details of how something actually works, right? Their heart guides them, which can be very inspirational for other people, but it can actually cause a lot of casualties if the Sagittarius person doesn't have a moral grounding, a pre-existing moral grounding in order to give containment to that fire, right? So it's ruled by Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion and luck and good fortune and abundance, you know? Jupiter is a big planet. It's the biggest planet apart from the sun. We call the sun a planet in astrology. And it actually puts out more energy than it takes in. So is the case for Sagittarius. Sagittarius, being one of the fire signs, is an extroverted energy. It puts out more than it takes in. So when burnout happens, in the rare occasion that burnout happens for a Sagittarius sun person, it's pretty intense. So even though they have a lot of vitality, they need to be careful about giving away too much, you know? Don't let that Jupiter rulership guide them 100% of the time, you know? 5-ish% of the time they need to just kind of sit back, meditate, have some time alone, and you know, make sure their thoughts and all this inspiration and energy is actually organized before they kind of go out and start spreading their wildfire again. You know? There's like almost nothing better than a Sagittarius who does have a solid moral backbone. You know, they can be one of the coolest and most inspirational people you'll ever meet. And I have Sagittarius in my 9th house. 11th house with no planets there. So I personally tend to really make friends with them and connect with them very well. But for one who doesn't have a moral grounding, who doesn't value truth above all things, they can be absolutely one of the most dangerous people you've ever met. They are near the top of the list for serial killers and rapists and stuff, in case you weren't aware of that. And there's a reason for that. It's because they are using that energy, that tremendous amount of energy that they are able to exert for evil rather than for good. And they're not going to give a shit about all of the trees they're burning down and spreading that wildfire, right? Sometimes you need to spread the wildfire in order to just clean the land and to start fresh, right? I agree. But don't kill too many woodland critters in the meantime. All right, Saggy Bay. Okay. What else? Scorpio is the sign before Sagittarius. I always like to say that every sign evolves out of the sign before it. Even Aries evolves out of Pisces, even though Aries is traditionally thought of as the first planet of the zodiac and Pisces the last. So it kind of makes up for that thing that the sign before it lacks, but actually overcorrects for it, you know? So whereas Scorpio is maybe overly reserved, overly sort of, you know, self-centered and obsessive and intense and deep, Sagittarius overcompensates for that by being way too, like, out there, you know, way too expansive sometimes. If they don't have self-awareness and can control themselves, control their ego. Because remember, we're talking about the ego here with the sun sign, you know? Ego is something you don't want to dissolve. It's something you want to integrate, right? Control it when you can, let it flow when you should, all right? And so it kind of overcorrects for those things of Scorpio that we don't like, right? Over-obsessiveness, over, you know, self-centeredness, hyper-self-centeredness. Sagittarius can be way too generous sometimes, you know, way too expansive, way too out there, right? They really like fun and adventure and music festivals and stuff. I call Sagittarius the Lollapaloozers of the zodiac. Yeah, again, they're mentally oriented, guided by the heart. They like banter, they like intelligence again. And they really like to kind of poke at you and provoke you and kind of light a fire inside of you in order to inspire you, in order to flirt with you, in order to kind of bring out the fun in you. And sometimes that involves you just like kind of getting pissed off at them and you just want to be like, chill out. Like they're very pesty. sometimes in conversation. They like to play devil's advocate just for the sake of itself. They're not necessarily truth oriented any more than any other sign. They just have fun in intellectual debate. They're more debaters than like logical arguers, you know? Capable of logical reasoning, right? And understanding a line of reasoning. But again, it depends on their moral grounding. That's going to decide whether or not they're oriented toward truth and toward goodness, or really just toward hedonism and for, you know, fulfilling their own fantasies in any given situation. They have big imaginations, you know. They're very fantasy oriented. Many of them really like, you know, hero mythologies and things like that, and they're very inspired by that sort of thing. Remember the centaur. It's not just the archer, but the centaur shooting an arrow is really the symbol for Sagittarius. It's a mythological creature. It's not real, okay? A lot of Sagittarian ideas, even if it's like in, you know, a structure like for work or something where you have to be like very practical and you have a given task, like they may have lots of ideas that are just, you know, very, very fantasy oriented. And again, it can be inspiring, but it can also lack grounding in what's realistic. And that's the kind of like miss the trees for the forest, big picture thinking that they like to engage in. Again, they're sapiosexual and attracted to intelligence in others as well. And they like to actually take initiative. They like to pursue, for the most part, even if it's covert, you know. Not to say that, like, Sagittarius women aren't women who want to be pursued in the same way that, like, most women prefer to be pursued. But they actually are more likely than most chicks, if we're talking about Sagittarius chicks. They're more likely to actually make that first move than most other, you know, sun sign women who I've been involved with anyway. They're very good at Sagittarius sun people. They're good at giving credit where it's due. You know, they are. It's part of their sort of devil's advocate nature to test you, to kind of shit test you. And if you pass their tests, they are like, oh, you know, well done, well done. And just in general, you know, if you're in a competitive situation with them, a lot of them tend to be pretty athletic. If they see you doing something that's, you know, they're good at recognizing skill. You know, they're good at giving credit where it's due in any realm that they have an interest in, especially. They are, I tend to see Myers-Briggs types ENFP come up a lot, and INFP as well. Although Sagittarius itself is more of an extroverted energy, you can have a lot of other stuff going on in your chart that makes you as a Sagittarius sun person more of an introvert. But overall, the ENFP, INFP kind of spectrum is very common for Sagittarius sun people. Again, down for whatever, very adventurous, likes to have a good time, largely morally unconcerned. Philosophically speaking, they do tend to be hedonists, even if they're interested in philosophy and political debate and stuff like that. They tend to put having fun ahead of truth itself in the priority list. And so, like, you know, you'll make like a good point and that's like true. And they may say something along the lines of, I understand, like, you know, props, but I don't know, that's just not fun to me. You know, if the truth takes away from their good time, it kind of like, it makes their heart feel bad, you know, because they're heart driven, and might make their blood boil, you know, and they're going to end up believing what they want to believe at the end of the day, whether it's true or not, you know. Not that everyone else isn't guilty of that too, but I'm just kind of pointing out that Sagittarius has the reputation of being, you know, the most philosophical type, but really there's no one type that's more philosophical, as in more truth-seeking than any other. It depends on where you are in your spiritual path, how emotionally mature you are, and how grounded you actually are in philosophical knowledge, you know. So I actually tend to attract Sagittarius people a lot because I have a master's degree in philosophy, you know, so tend to connect with them because they like my intelligence or whatever. What else? Yeah, Sagittarius is the opposite sign of Gemini. So they kind of take similar approaches to flirting. Only like Gemini is more about wordplay, more about like specifics, right? And like throwing words against the wall and like random phrases against the wall. Like whether or not it's coherent doesn't really matter. They're just kind of being witty for wit's sake. Sagittarius more likes to connect the dots. You know, if they're flirting with someone, maybe they like to come off as like intelligent by connecting dots and giving you a kind of a big picture perspective that you weren't aware of before. It's one way they like to flirt. Sag is kind of the French postmodern relativist, while Capricorn, the next sign, is more the ancient Stoic philosopher, if we're putting this in philosophical terms. You know, one of the ways in which Sagittarius evolves into Capricorn, where Capricorn kind of has the edge on them, is logical precision. Capricorn kind of ousts Sagittarius in terms of logical precision, because Capricorn's has a nice balance between detail orientation and big picture thinking. And they tend to be more dry and kind of more focused on like raw logic rather than what just inspires the heart. You know what I mean? So generally speaking, though, that's a combination. You know, if there's like a lot of Sagittarius energy and a lot of Capricorn energy going on between two people, it tends to be a good fit. They tend to like sort of respect each other's perspectives and enjoy each other's company on kind of a highbrow level. You know what I mean? Have like a fancy drink, like a scotch or an old fashioned together and like wax philosophical for hours over the course of an evening. Tends to be a pretty good pairing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend most side-by-side signs as like, you know, partners or whatever, but they at least make good friends, and there tends to be potential for an emotional connection there as well, because they're both kind of mentally oriented in their own ways and tend to connect on that higher level. So Sag and Capricorn for being side-by-side signs is an interesting combination. I have written here that Sagittarius is not very nice. They're not very nice, and they're potentially sociopathic. Especially the dudes, I have noticed that although they're guided by the heart, and although they do have like they act from their emotions more often than from like logical principles, which can catch people off guard because they tend to at least come off as intelligent and everything. They do have this element of like, sometimes they think that they're doing the right thing, but really they're being so self-centered in their pursuit of this thing. It's like so much about themselves and not about anyone else. You start to question, like, dude, do they have empathy at all? Or, like, do they actually give a shit about anyone? Because, like, again, they're kind of hedonists. They're kind of the hedonists of the zodiac. The hedonistic philosophers. They put having a good time and having fun and like, fulfilling their need for adventure above all else, especially if they're underdeveloped. But the good in this is that once they do find their spiritual grounding, again, they can use that energy exertion for good and end up, sort of spreading the love in ways that most people just don't have energy for. And so that is really one of their main values in life, especially once they kind of, form that grounding on their spiritual path. They are looking to spread the good news and the abundance of whatever it is that they have, expert knowledge in or expertise in. They want to give that away. They can be very, very giving and very, very inspirational and very, very interesting and fun people to be around. So that's my analysis of Sun in the sign of Sagittarius. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.